Come with me on a journey, decoding Buddhism. I will cover in 8 divisions the central and esoteric teachings from Buddha's life. Do you know the 2 main reasons why Buddha came when he did? Doesn't it make you wonder why Buddha did not talk or teach about the self or the soul, or did he? Buddha taught esoteric Buddhism to his inner circle of arhats and established a secret mystery school only for the initiated. By understanding the 4 Noble Truths and the 5 skandhas, you can learn to balance karma faster. Learn what is the chitta and why it is the most important term in Buddhism. Let's look at an esoteric understanding of the middle way and the Eightfold Path, and how it relates to Padmasambhava and the rainbow body of the 7 rays and the 8th. You may know of the incarnations of Gautama as the soul of Sumedha, but did you know about his reincarnations after being the Buddha? The Eightfold Path is the path of integration, so let's put together everything we learned to ignite the Buddhic fire and achieve bodhicitta. Welcome. It's wonderful to see all these happy faces. People from Yale, Vancouver, and Seattle, and
Stockholm.
What's it up there? What's that?
Blaine.
Blaine. That's great. We're going to talk about Buddhism today. It's going to be exciting. For those who don't know me, I'm going to actually... My name is Johan Lindström, and before we begin, I'll tell you a little short story about me and how I found the spiritual path. It's something that I at first didn't think of started my actual path. I was born in Sweden, 1962, and found the teachings back in 1983. It's been with the teachings ever since, ups and downs included. But what really started my journey was a fight. And what happened, I was 15 years old, and I was going to the movies with a friend downtown Stockholm. And you come up the subway, and what happens, a guy comes from behind, grabs my wallet, and it's like, my wallet's my life. So I decided instinctively to jump on the guy. So I jumped on the guy and somehow got my hand on the wallet, and the second guy came and hit me right here back at the neck, knowing that I would lose consciousness. And I did for a split second, and somehow I landed with my hand down like this and didn't actually fall backwards. Then something mysterious happened. I see 2 feet coming towards my face. And this happens, you know, in split seconds. Some mysterious force was taking over and raised me to the point where my chest took the blow and moved me through between these 2 guys like this. Wallet in hand, and the last guy was able to do an uppercut and give me a black eye later. But I was 15, they were probably like 17, 18 years old. My friend was hit in the stomach, so he was incapacitated. But in that moment, people were gathering and these 2 guys disappeared. I don't know how I managed to not be manhandled, but this mysterious force, it was like it took over, directed me. It was like a higher intelligence inside of me. And that's the way it was for a while. I was like pondering this. And as a result, I didn't want to ever get into that situation again. So I decided to go learn Kung Fu. And I got one of those bulwark machines. You can build muscle and do all that. And so I got into Kung Fu, and lo and behold, what did the they have a little emblem right here in the Kung Fu dress or whatever outfit you get, and it was a yin yang. And of course, yin yang is, I was like, what is that? I heard about, you can learn about how to master your body, soul, and mind through Tai Chi or Kung Fu or karate, so that's what got me started. It wasn't very long until I realized I got to learn more about this yin yang thing. And I picked up a copy of Tao Te Ching. You all heard of that Tao Te Ching? And it was very mysterious. I felt like being on the path. The very first verse of the Tao Te Ching just hooked me. I'm just going to read it to you. The Tao that can be spoken of or defined is not the eternal or absolute Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal and absolute name. The Tao is both name and nameless. The named is the origin of 10,000 things. And the named is the mother of 10,000 things. Those who conquer desire can see the subtle mysteries of all creation. Those who live by desire can only see its manifestations. The two together emerge. They have different names, yet they are all called the same name. Having reached the subtlety of the universe, one may see the ultimate subtlety and the gateway to all wonders. This is the Tao. There's 81 verses like that, and that's what got me started on the spiritual path. And so, as a result, I got into karate shows for a little while. And here's my karate teacher. So I went into Kung Fu and then karate. And we did a show for some people try to get more members to our club. And it looks like I have a black belt. That's really for show. I didn't have one. But you know, we were choreographing this to a point. And we just had a really good time. And then as my school year was over, I decided, okay, with Chip Phelps here was from the US, an exchange student in Stockholm. We decided to do a show for our classmates at the end of the school year. So we did a little, let's see what happens there. So we had fun, and as a result, I decided later on to take a journey, a spiritual journey around South America. And with me, I brought some books. I had to discover what truth was, what enlightenment was. And this got me kind of started on the Buddha. I found a lecture called The Human Aura. And so I went to it. Lars Johansson, a Swedish keeper, held this lecture. And I saw this book, Quietly Comes the Buddha. And I said, wow, I got to read that book. They only had one display copy, so I couldn't buy that one. So I was like, okay, I'll buy this Chila and the Path, the Intermediate Studies of the Human Aura, and Understanding Yourself. And I took those with me on a journey to South America. So I'd been an exchange student for a year in South America, in Lake Chelan, Washington. And my roommate was from Brazil. So he actually invited me to Brazil to stay with his folks, and then I decided I'm going to take a trip around the whole continent. So I traversed South America for 16 months. This is me walking somewhere in Montevideo or in Uruguay, or could be another town, but I began my spiritual journey. I'll just show you a few more pictures here. I found the violet flame, and you can see my shirt there. I actually dyed it to look like a violet flame. I had a little tiny decree book of just violet flame decrees. That's what I had on my journey. And I didn't know how to decree. I'd never met a keeper of the flame before. And so I just did it from the heart, and it was great. Once I finally came back to Sweden and met up with the keepers there, they started decreeing, and I realized they were much faster than me.
I know how that works.
So I had to speed up. I didn't understand the whole thing with the speeding, but I caught up pretty quickly. And here's one from Machu Picchu, and also same shirt. And I have a little necklace there with a cross on it. And here's me on the floating islands. Have you ever been to the floating islands in Lake Titicaca? No. Yeah, it's a great place. I went to the island of Amantani in the middle of Lake Titicaca, but on the way they stopped here on the floating islands and got to chat with
just
people.
the same, almost.
Yeah,
Right?
I'm just older there.
Yeah, you look the same.
So, yeah, I was 21 at that time.
Wow.
And but it's pretty cool because those islands, if you put a stone on the grass or the whatever you call that, weeds, it goes down through, and within a week it pops out on the other end. And they were growing potatoes, so I had to put plastic underneath to hold the soil. But they were growing potatoes like that.
There?
On that little floating island, yeah.
Oh wow.
You can see how suntan they are living in that environment. Toward the end of my journey, 16 months, I had about 2 months left. I was coming down, having been, up to even Colombia and then back to the Amazon and came back on the beaches of Brazil. And I started to meditate more. When I had started my journey, I said, I'm not going to come back to Sweden until I have reached enlightenment. That was my promise to myself. And I didn't really know what that meant, but I knew, and I bought an open ticket. I said, I got to reach some kind of inner resolve before I return. And so I spent the 2 last months meditating a lot down the beaches of Brazil. But so I didn't really know that much about the Buddha, but I had an inner knowing, an inner feeling, a sensation of Buddhahood, and it was very important to me. So that gets me to where we are now, decoding Buddhism. And when I found the teachings, I came back to Sweden, found the teachings, and didn't really have much to go on as far as Buddhism went, but we got all these dictations from the masters, right? We have well over 100 dictations by Gautama Buddha himself. And as a result, I didn't feel a need to go looking into Buddhism per se. So a few years ago I started researching karma, reincarnation, the soul, the journey of the soul. I'm writing a book about it, and then I came upon the stumbling block of Buddhism, because supposedly Buddha didn't teach about the soul, he didn't teach about God, and I was like, what's going on? This is not the Buddha that I know. And so I had to dig deeper. Come with me and learn what I've discovered, as I will reveal little-known facts about Buddha's life. This lecture is an attempt to give a new perspective on the Ascended Master teachings, including what Buddha has said in our time, speaking through our messengers, Elizabeth and Mark Prophet. And let's see what we can learn from Theosophy's own Madame Blavatsky. In combination with the earliest Buddhist texts in existence, the 5 Nikayas, precluding any Buddhist commentary on what Buddha said. Then let's put that in contrast to what modern Buddhism is teaching today through Theravada, Mahayana, and Tibetan Buddhism, as well as secular Buddhism. According to my knowledge, this is an undertaking that has never been done before. Together we'll unravel, like theology detectives, the inner esoteric meanings of Buddhism and some ways in which we can apply it today. We're going to get new insight into what Buddha said and may have taught about 1. The soul, 2. The mysterious middle path, 3. The awakened mind, and 4. Nirvana. Let us come into a deeper understanding of the original Buddhic fire and teaching, perhaps in the way Gautama meant it. So here we are. Are you guys ready to dig deeper?
Yes.
Learn some Buddhism, what Buddhism is and what it's not, and decoding a few key phrases in Buddhism that you may not be aware of, and what they are and what they truly mean. I started this journey last fall, actually last summer, and when I ran into a guy on the internet who had videos on metaphysics, and his name's Ken Wheeler. We'll see him here shortly in some video clips. But he is talking about anatta, the concept of anatta, of no soul, and explained it. And I finally got, hey, now I got some wind in my sails, so I'm going to go after this and really dig deep. So that's where we are. And decoding Buddhism. I'm going to start you out here with Mother. Also made a little comment about these types of lectures that we're having today, and she wants to share that with you.
Let your mind be unlocked. Let the intellect be unlocked. Just by having to channel your mind and your thinking into different ways of approaching life and approaching yourself. This is the purpose of having these lectures, to make us come from an entirely different direction, to make us work, to make us have to really think to understand what it is that Bodhidharma is saying. And that is the whole key to Bodhidharma. The key is to be able to let go of the way the mind is trained, especially in the West, and retrain the mind and retrain the tracks of the mind. Then we will not be bound any longer. We will be liberated.
So here we go. Division 1, Buddha's story of why he came when he did. Did you know that Buddhism is famous today for all the things that Buddha never taught? This was from a quote from a Goswami. And so why did Buddha come now? Sumedha, the soul of Gautama, as you remember, lived in the Tushita heaven. And the gods were telling him, it is time for you to go. You need to achieve or assume your Buddhahood. So Buddha, as Sumedha, decided, okay, I'm going to check this out. If people live to be 100,000 years old, then I'm not going to go. But if they live around 100 years or so, I'll consider it. I guess I'll go. So he looked at the situation and what was going on in India, and he decided now is the time. So what happened also is, back in those days, if you know, the Brahmins were in control. They had the power, even over kings. And so they were running the show with a caste system. And that is partly why Buddha came to abolish the caste system and teach a more direct route. Back in those days, you had a lot of symbology, a lot of doctrines and dogmas, just like we find today. And so the Brahmin caste were not allowing the people to connect with God. And so Buddha came, and we all know the story of the Buddha. But when he started going out preaching, he dealt with all people. He talked to the common people. He wanted to connect with the untouchables. And there's, I don't know if you have seen that series, The Buddha, or Buddha, and where he accepts everyone. Everyone is allowed to come in. But one of the reasons he came was because of the decadence of the Brahmins who had run the show for so long, and the people weren't being saved. And when Buddhists talk about time, they talk about time in eons. And so like when you reincarnate, he's talking about you have to reincarnate for eons. Buddha wanted to change that. He wanted us to reincarnate maybe 1 to 16 times and then be done with it. We find that teaching in Tibetan Buddhism. But so he also wanted to discard superstition and the caste system and all the empty rituals. So if you look at the teachings of the Buddha, they're called schools for a reason. We're learning, they're not churches, but we're bypassing rituals that were originally done. Like he grew up in a Vedantic community. Everybody was doing rituals to all these different gods and goddesses, and he was bypassing all of that. He's saying, hey, let's go to the heart of the matter. What's really important here? And so he spent himself studying the Vedas when he was a youth. As he was a prince, he had that access to the Vedas, and later on he went into the woods for 6 years, meditating, doing all kinds of self-modifications, and trying to figure the way. And came out of that, what we know as he entered the state of nirvana and came back with the teaching. And so we all know what that teaching is, the four noble truths and the Eightfold Path. Ken Wheeler, metaphysicist, pedologist, and polytranslator, he said, Buddhism in its original form was a neo-Vedantic movement. It is only a branch of Vedic Hinduism. Gautama called himself a Vairagu. Vairagu means sage or expert in the Vedas. And he said, I have entered the path lost long ago. I have seen the ancient path, the old road, followed by all Brahmins. I have rediscovered it. So what happened is, Buddha didn't come to just continue in the old way. He came with a new path where he extracted the essence out of the Vedas. He took the lessons from it and created his own path. And one that would accelerate, and this is what happens when a new dispensation comes around. They accelerate the path for the soul. And his path was a more direct way to accelerate karma balancing, as Mother has said it. It's distilled repackaging and a distilled version of the Vedas. Because the Vedas, most people didn't even have access to it. So he said in the dictation, this is a basic teaching. The Four Noble Truths and Eightfold Path is a basic teaching, but it's one that anyone can adapt to, whether you're advanced or you have no knowledge of the path. So everybody can grab the Four Noble Truths, which is the diagnosis, and we'll go into that in detail a little bit later. So, Buddha said in the dictation, he was born 563 AD, lived for 80 years supposedly, to 483 BCE, we should say now, before Common Era. At that time there were many kings and kingdoms vying for power, and so in those days, I'm quoting Buddha here, in those days it was dangerous for individuals to engage in metaphysical speculation or in hierarchy or in cosmic beings beyond themselves, for they, the people, were emerging from the traditions of a total dependence upon a priesthood in a state of decay and degeneration, unquote. So, let's discover what Buddha said himself as recorded in the earliest text called the Nikayas. I don't know if you've heard of the Nikayas. There are 5 collections, 5 Nikayas, and they were recorded around 150 BCE or to somewhere in that range. They don't know an exact date. They were saved by King Ashok, who took them to Sri Lanka to save the Buddhist teachings. He became a Buddhist himself, had a huge an empire, in fact. So if you look up King Ashok, he was a ruler over many. But he saved Buddhism, and so those are the earliest texts, and they're undisputedly the earliest ones from all Theravada traditions, Mahayana tradition, what Tibetan Buddhism. They all recognize these texts as being the original ones. But what's happened is the Theravadins, that's the earliest, you could call them the fundamentalists of Buddhism. The Theravadins, they created their own Tripitaka, or their own doctrine or canon, in which they don't really look into the Nikayas anymore. They only follow their own teachings. So they collected their version of Buddhism and then say, well, we acknowledge the Nikayas, they do exist, but we don't have to read them, we have our own stuff. So that's why they're not recognizing them as true. They don't even spend time, they're allowed to read them, but they're just like, why worry? We have our own stuff. So what Ken Wheeler said is that Buddha did not come to start a new religion per se. That was actually dangerous at the time. He came to rediscover the old ancient way, and he said, he called it Brahmayana. Yana means path. The path back to the Absolute, back to Brahman. I've seen the ancient way that was lost and I have found it. So he based it on the four Vedas, just like Jesus based his teachings on the Torah. Now, we're coming to an exciting part. It's called the New Pathway. Likewise, Buddha came to fulfill the law, reviving the ancient way, demonstrating a more indirect route to Brahman through wisdom, compassion, living virtuously, and through meditation. In paraphrasing Elizabeth Clare Prophet, the Eightfold Path was a path of transformation and karma balancing of its day. But it is lacking the dispensation that we have now. Now we have to add to that Eightfold Path the violet flame. Very key. So, at the time, Buddha didn't have access to that, nor his disciples. So they had to work much harder at salvation or enlightenment. We have it so much easier. But what Buddha came to say is that we are all sick. And the Four Noble Truths speaks to that fact. And he derived this insight from the Vedas. If you go to the Ayurveda and the Atharvaveda teachings, you will find this concept of the doctor's diagnosis that we're sick. And he discovered, that we are sick because of impermanence and because of ignorance. So he came to abolish that. Buddha's methodology began with the doctor's diagnosis telling us we're sick, yet we don't know it. And we may not even believe it. Especially when life is good and all goes well for us. In the moment when you look around and look at all your friends, your family, everyone's healthy, everybody's got a job or in school, no real troubles on the horizon, everything's pretty good. Why would we still be sick in a moment like that? In Buddha's answer is that we know that even when things are good, they will end. This is the law of impermanence. So when things are great, in the very moment you realize that things are great, you have stepped out of that greatness because you become self-aware of the good that you experience. Because where you're in the good, you're flowing, you're in the zone. And once you become aware, all of a sudden it ended. That was great. I wish it can continue for another, for the rest of my life or for the rest of the day. Let this day never end. But we know it will. So Buddha said, this impermanence is what we need to overcome. And that's why we need the Eightfold Path and the understanding of the Buddha, the Buddhic consciousness. I have a little excerpt from one of the dictations of Gautama Buddha coming up next, where he actually speaks to the fact. It's a story, it's an old story. It's called The Good Physician. Let's hear it now.
Souls come because they lack. They that are whole need not the physician, but they that are sick. And what of the ones who know not that they are sick? They need to be tricked, like the good physician. like the story that I told my disciples about the sons who had taken drugs. Sons who were sick, some of them who knew that they were sick, some who knew it not. The physician gave the antidote. Those who knew that they were sick took the antidote. Those who knew not that they were sick saw no need to take it. And so they remained diseased, ignorant in their disease. The physician was wise. He said to them, I will leave you this remedy. It will remain with you, and if you ever have a need for it, then take it. And then the physician departed into a far country, and he sent word back to his sons that they should be told that he had died. The sons, upon learning this, thought to themselves, what a tragedy that we did not come to know Father more while he was here. And then one remembered that he had left the remedy, and they said, he must have known that we needed this remedy. This is why he has left it with us. And so they took the remedy. They were made whole, whereupon the physician returned, much to the rejoicing of his sons. Is it ever so that the teacher must depart in order for the teaching to be appreciated? Is it ever so that those who are sick know not that they are sick, know not that they need the teaching and the way and the law and the light and the word? Must there be such a great distance between the teacher and the remedy before the remedy is accepted? Will you wait until the ascended masters are less available, when the cycles have turned and options for initiation are not so available here in the plains of Mater? That which is available becomes common. Easily obtainable, mankind wait. They wait another day, and their postponement is part of the lie of procrastination, of the separation of the soul from the spirit of the living one. I am Gautama of the flame of Shambhala, of the flame of Maitreya and Sanat Kumara. I come on a very special mission to these islands. I come, I return to my sons and daughters after having been away many centuries. Much distance in the form of time and space has separated this close contact. And for some peculiarity of the human consciousness, distance in this case has lent enchantment to the view.
A godless doctrine. Most of us, when we think of Buddhism, don't think of it being godless or lacking soul, heart. Do you? So what went wrong? Has anybody heard of secular Buddhism? Mm-hmm. Secular Buddhism is something I didn't really ponder until I started studying Buddhism more in depth. And here's the definition from secularbuddhism.com, their own website. Secular Buddhism is not a religion. It is referred to only as a practice or a path. It accepts all teachings of the Buddha as passed down through history, except for any form of theism or reincarnation or karma beyond this life. It is atheistic and devoid of spirituality. That's their own division. Yeah. So as we look deeper today, we'll realize that Buddha did not teach all that much about the soul, but there was a reason for that. he had come with a certain instruction from Sanat Kumara and the Brotherhood. But he didn't say nothing about the soul. So when I started studying Buddhism, it was mostly through the Ascended Master teachings. And so I just had an inner connection that I'm sure you all have with the Buddha and the Mother. Are you guys familiar with the term Atman and Brahman? And Brahma. You know the difference between Brahman and Brahma?
No.
So,
Brahman's God.
so Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva are the Trinity, the creator God Brahma, whereas Brahman is beyond all attributes. It's the supreme ultimate reality beyond all attributes. It's the undefinable God, undefinable spirit. So when we say God sitting on a cloud, that's not it. That would be more like Brahma. And of course, Atman, if you're not familiar with the term Atman, that is your God presence. And there's a lot of confusion in the world today of what is the Atman, because there are different teachings on it. And Mother had a lecture on Buddhism and on Hinduism, and she explains that the word for soul in Hinduism is Jiva, or Jivatman, the Jiva of Atman. So these are terminologies that we'll find in the Nikayas, or the earliest texts of Buddhism. And so Buddha came to stop procrastination and predestination. Why would he do that? Procrastination is because back in the day they thought that Atman is the soul, and they equated it with the soul. And so in that concept, for example, Lord Krishna said, you know, the spiritual ceased to be never. Never was it born, never will it die. So people take that meaning the soul. I have eternity, so why should I worry about my spiritual enlightenment today? Why should I care to be good? Actually, my life is really good right now. I don't want to deal with the spiritual stuff. I'll do that in my next life. Right? So that's called procrastination. Also, predestination means they think that we already have a path, I'm on the path, I don't have to do anything, it will just be laid out for me, I don't have to think. So he wanted to stop both of those and get us to realize that we have to use our own intellect, our own smarts, our own hearts, our own love to overcome this physical world. And we'll discuss something later here called the skandhas, which is a topic I'm excited about. So, do you see now the answer to the question why Buddha came when he did? He responded to the call of Dipankara, which is another incarnation of the Sanat Kumara, the Buddha of the past. And also he came because the spiritual path had degenerated, and third, he came because people needed to do a 180 and get out of this procrastination and predestination mentality. So now we're getting into the deeper understanding of what brought me to this whole lecture, to create this lecture, is the next chapter, next edition. The doctrine of anatta, the no self, no soul doctrine. Has any of you heard about this doctrine of anatta?